Welcome, welcome, Dave. This is our Christmas episode. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas. Glad to be here.
Dave, before the show, we were talking. You have this awesome Santa suit you wear every year. I was really hoping to surprise everyone, but you said that would be awkward if that happened today.
Yeah, I'm at a resort, and you can see I've got this nice Christmas tree behind me. This is in my room. They put a Christmas tree in everybody's room. They decorate it up, but they have their own Santa. So I thought it'd be a little odd if I started walking around in my Santa suit. Kids started chasing me back to the hotel room. So I said I better just stick with the hoodie today and not get too many people chasing me through the resort.
I'm so glad you didn't wear that Santa suit, even though it would have been great for everyone. Maybe we'll have to post a picture because you do dress up as Santa once in a while, right? For
I
your
do.
areas.
Yeah, I don't do it for money at all. I mean, and really, if someone asks, I generally don't do it. It's just I do it for the opportunity to go deliver stuff to people, bring happiness and joy to people's lives, and really, that's what it's all about.
That's awesome. I deliver cookies, but I need to get a Santa suit apparently because I just show up in my orange and that's about it.
Well, you're small enough, CR. You may just get an elf suit. You're going to have to add a lot of pounds on there to hit that Santa suit side, but maybe
Yeah.
just get an elf suit and deliver those cookies out.
I'm definitely not Kevin Hart small. I'm just, a little frail.
Yeah, yeah. You got the height, just not the girth around the middle there.
Yeah. Well, I just want to welcome all of you who are joining us live. Thank you so much for being here. And those joining us on replay, welcome. We're so glad you're here. Every Wednesday, we do this at 11 a.m. Central Time. We come on and we talk about retirement. Dave, one of your very favorite topics. And today it's going to be a little different, but retirement in general, we need to do something. It's getting the end of the year, Dave. So we have to be able to transition as we're getting into 2022. And I need some advice before we get started.
We really do need to transition, and what we've got to do is start making time for it. Yeah, what we've got is a retirement that is based upon our own savings now. It's not our companies that are going to be putting the money aside for most of us. Government's not going to provide you enough through Social Security to take care of your retirement fully. So we've got to start planning ourselves, and that's my goal for everyone. That's our goal as educators. Say, look, let's give you the information you need to start making some decisions, start taking action on the education you're getting, on those key things, the strategies that we share that'll help you get to a tax-free and risk-free retirement.
And Dave, every week we change up our show a little bit. This week is a little special because we just launched one of your brand new 4-hour webinars. Let me get it on the screen here so I can have you talk about it before I give the details.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite webinars. It was taking some of our most popular courses and combining them together. It's something we decided to try out. We weren't sure how it was going to work, having a 4-hour class that covered these topics. But what we got back from those who attended our first class is they really liked it because they intertwined so much, especially when you look at Social Security, Medicare, and even long-term care. There's things that intertwine after each program, gave them an opportunity to get a lot of great information in 4 hours, in a 4-hour period of time.
And Dave, with that, we didn't have much time for questions. So I pulled a lot of questions from this particular webinar so I could ask you, because we not only had really great questions, but we also had a lot of people that were just asking questions that didn't get answers. So I said, hey, let's do our live show. Let's pull a lot of the questions from this particular webinar, because Dave, by the time we got done, I mean, we had over 100 questions that came just from the one webinar in 4 hours.
Yeah, it's always tough when we talk about those topics. They are the most, where the most questions are asked. It's very interesting when we teach them individually, and it's hard as a teacher to figure out how you deal with that, because you do want to get through all the questions you possibly can. But if we were to do that, we'd probably only end up covering Social Security in our first in those 4 hours. So, definitely glad we're here today to answer those questions for people.
And again, if you are here with us live, go ahead and submit your question. We'll pop in and take those in between all of these other questions. We'd love to have your question. And if Dave brings up a particular topic you're interested in, please go ahead and ask more questions about it. That's why we're here. So here to give you the best education in retirement. Dave, let's just start out right away. Let's get over to our first question. You should be able to see that on your screen now. This is from Cindy. And would married filing jointly income be used to determine Medicare and Part D premium if the first spouse turns 65 before the other, who will apply years later?
No, so it's basically going to be based upon your individual income. So, whoever's getting that benefit, that person turning age 65, going to be based upon the income that they have.
Dave, do you get a lot of Medicare questions? I mean, obviously with this webinar, but in general, do you have a lot of people that are struggling with Medicare?
Yeah, we do get a lot of questions. Now, the reason is because most people think it's very simple and easy. So they're in a situation where they assume that it's not as complex as it is. And then we get talking about it. And all of a sudden, it brings up a slew of questions that people hadn't thought about before or didn't even think they needed to think about, but realize that it is far more complex than they expected.
Well, Dave, let's get down to Irvin and let's see what his question. Should I convert some of my traditional IRAs to Roth IRAs now to avoid higher taxes due to RMDs?
Irvin, I would recommend it based upon where tax rates are. If we look at it, we're in a period of historically low tax rates. Those are going to last until January 1st, 2026. So definitely would recommend for most people to take advantage of this period of time where we can get money transferred at a much lower bracket and much lower rate.
Dave, could this be any relation to Irvin Johnson maybe from years
I don't,
ago?
yeah, I don't know. That would be nice. Yeah, definitely be nice.
Yeah. All right, Dave. Well, let's continue on. I've got a lot of questions we're going to throw at you here. So, Larissa is wondering, I would prefer to leave our state health insurance as a primary insurance. What should I do? Do not register or
Yeah, the best thing that you can do, Larissa, is to talk with your state health insurance and figure out how it interacts with Medicare. Now, different insurance companies are going to interact differently. Most federal health insurance programs, they're going to be the primary insured. So you may be able to never sign up for Medicare. Not sure how your state health insurance is going to work. So talk to them, see how they interact with Medicare, see who's going to be primary, and then you can figure out if you want to sign up for Medicare or not, or if you just stay on that health insurance that you've got from the state, as long as they'll allow you. And for some people, that's throughout the rest of their lives.
Dave, is there harm if we do not sign up for Medicare?
There can be, if you were supposed to have and you didn't get signed up, there's going to be a late sign up penalty, 10% per year for each year you didn't sign up. That's on Part B. Part D's got its own penalties as well. And if you were going to have to pay for Part A, there'd be penalties there, but most people don't have to. But yeah, there's consequences. And the reason is because Medicare works like every other insurance out there. Those who are healthy end up paying fees for those who are not healthy. And that's why they've got this penalty imposed on it.
All right, Dave, let's pull up Joseph's question. His wife is entitled to $500. Husband is entitled to $3,000. If wife claims at 62, will she get an increase to $1,500 when husband files later?
Not that big because she ended up claiming early because she started taking those benefits at age 62. She's going to have a reduction of those benefits depending on when full retirement age is, can be anywhere from 25 to 30% of what the amount she'd originally be entitled to at full retirement age. So yes, she would get a step up to some level, but it's not going to be fully to 1,500 because she claimed early.
Dave, you do talk about this. If we can, you want to make sure that we're claiming at 70 in Social Security, but you're saying there's a lot of things in life that just push us or things that happen and we have to be able to claim early. But you're talking right here, if they would have waited, you're seeing a huge difference.
Yeah, and many people don't understand it. That's why they do it. Number two, everybody's afraid it's going to run out of money. It's going to go broke, and that's valid. When we look at it, 2033, it's going to run out of money. It'll only be able to pay 76% of the benefits. But we've got to understand a few things about what's going on a much bigger scale. Number one, Social Security is most like program, so we expect it to be fixed. There's a huge voting block that'll be voting to get it fixed. Number two, Social Security goes away. 40% of retirees have no income. Well, what does that do to our economy when we look at the number of baby boomers that are in retirement right now? It cannot collapse. And if it does, the whole government's gone down with it. So, sometimes we get into the micro of, I just want to make sure I don't lose something, that if it goes broke, that, I missed out on something I could have got earlier. You've got a far bigger problem of you ending up taking it early and then being broke in your 80s and 90s than you do that Social Security is going to run out and you're going to miss out on a few bucks. And I just wish people would understand that.
Very great point, Dave. And I think that's the one thing we continually stress about and talk about. Let's get down to Jacqueline's question. Do I have to sign up and pay for Medicare out of pocket at age 65, even though my full retirement age is 67?
Jacqueline, I'm glad you asked this question. This is some confusion that happens out there. Full retirement age from Social Security is not anything related to Medicare age. So your full retirement age and what you do with Social Security has no impact on Medicare. So yes, 65 is the age that you should be getting Medicare. Now, if you've got other insurance, let's say that you're still working, you've got employer insurance that qualifies, you're with a large employer, then yeah, you can go ahead and stay on the insurance you have. You don't have to pay, but do some research. Again, you've got to figure out what insurance you have, what's available, how Medicare will interact, because you definitely don't want to wait until 67, not have had credible coverage, or not have the right coverage, have an event at age 66 that you're going to be stuck paying out of pocket for.
And Dave, this is something you illustrated earlier by you talking about how Medicare is misunderstood or people don't quite understand. And so they're making big changes in their life and they don't realize that this is something completely different.
Yeah, and a bigger problem usually is people that want to take Social Security at age 62, and now you don't have a medical option. You've retired. You've said, "Look, I'm going to take my Social Security because if you keep working and you start taking it early, you're probably going to get phased out of those benefits the way it works." So now you're thinking, "Hey, I retired. I'm going to get my Social Security, and I can go on Medicare." Well, Medicare doesn't start till 65, so you've got a 3-year window now. Luckily, with the way things are now, with the marketplace and all the credits that are being given, you can probably get semi-affordable insurance up until you get to age 65, but it's a gap that people aren't even thinking about. They're not considering that's going to create some issues, not only from a coverage side, but a cost CR. I mean, the earlier you're starting to spend money on all these healthcare items that you didn't think you may be spending, sooner you're going to run out of money when we get later on in our retirement.
Dave, is healthcare a big expense for us once we get into retirement? Because it sounds like it's expensive.
It is, and it's getting worse. I mean, look at what happened this year. So 2022, we're going to have a 5.9% increase in Social Security. Medicare premiums went up over 14% CR. I mean, talk about inflation, and that continues to happen. This isn't a one-time event. When we look at the cost of medicine and healthcare services, they keep outpacing inflation. So you look at it now, they're saying $150,000 for a male, $135,000 for a female is what you should be planning on when you get into retirement for medical costs, whether it's coinsurance, copays, whatever the case may be. But it is big. And especially for those people that have had employer provided coverage, maybe your employer's provided coverage for your whole family. You know, that now is what, worth $1,500 to $3,000 a month. I mean, it's a huge dollar amount. And then all of a sudden you lose that and you have to pay yourself. If you weren't planning on that line item, for many people, it may be more than you're paying for your mortgage when you get into retirement, and definitely more than you're going to be paid for those car payments if you still have car payments.
And Dave, that is such a scary thought because, you know, you and I have talked several times about insurance and all the different pieces covering families right now, but you're talking out into retirement space and it's a whole different animal. And you're talking over $150,000.
Yeah, and you can't just take Medicare, meaning by itself, say, hey, look, I'm going to take traditional Medicare. Part A is free. Part B for 2022, $170.10. You know, you can't just do that if you've got medical issues. Now, if you're healthy and don't ever use it, yeah, not a problem. But there's such big gaps inside of there. I mean, especially on a Part B, you go in for a out of hospital procedure just in a clinic. You know, many times those can run 6 figures. You're on the hook for 20% of that. You could be on the hook for $20,000 just from that one event. So you've got to buy either a Medicare Advantage plan, a Medigap plan, whatever the case may be. All that's going to cost you additional money. So it's something you've just got to start planning for. People have got to start looking at.
All right, we definitely appreciate that. And I just want to remind those that are with us live, go ahead and submit your questions and we'll go ahead and squeeze those in when we can. If you're on replay, you can always send us more questions that we'll answer at retirementriskadvisors.com/ and contact us. And we'll be able to get those questions on our future shows. Well, Dave, let's jump down to Nancy's question. If my birth month is February, can I contribute the maximum to my HSA in January before my 65th birthday?
You can contribute the maximum for that month, which is not really, I think, what she's asking here. I think what she's hoping is saying, look, and in January, can I pay the whole year's worth of HSA contributions into the account and allow them to go over that period? You can't. You can only do it month by month once you get into that 65th year and are going to end up going on to Medicare. So yeah, you've got to make that contribution. If not, you're going to end up with some penalties for overfunding that.
And Dave, we don't talk about HSA very often, but is this something we can use when we're getting closer to retirement?
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about this. HSAs, you can pull money out of them in retirement. I do recommend people have these if you can. Great way to put money aside that you're not going to pay tax going in. You're going to get tax free going out, assuming you've got medical expenses, which most people do. Problem is a couple issues. If you're approaching age 65, like Nancy is here, you've got to stop the month before. If you're over, let's say you were in a employer plan, now you're age 67, you've got to stop 6 months before, because what they're going to do on that free Part A Medicare, they're going to take it back 6 months. So you may think, oh, I'm fine, I can wait until a month before. Not the case if you're already over age 65.
I think that's really good to look at, Dave, and I appreciate you bringing that extra piece up there. Let's jump down to Harlan. Harlan is wondering, does Part A cover emergency room services? Is it still better to have Medicare Plus supplement if you choose a PPO or HMO plan instead?
Yeah, so Part A in general is going to cover those services. It's not something, in theory, you're going to have a ton of out-of-pocket costs. You would end up having your deductible, and if you went from the emergency room into a hospital long term, you would end up having potentially additional out of pocket. But I recommend everyone out there have a supplemental plan of some form. Now, when we look at it, Medicare Advantage plans are geographically based. She's talking about it here, saying, look, it's a PPO or HMO option. They're going to operate much like your current insurance, where HMO is going to be cheaper, but you're going to have to get pre-approvals. You're going to have to stay within network. PPO is going to give you much more freedom to do things. But then compare that to traditional Medicare with the Medicare supplement plan, or what they call a Medigap plan. You've got complete freedom there to go all across the country. It's not geographically based. So I do recommend people get something else. I don't know for you what's going to be your best option, but there are brokers out there. We work with brokers that can help you figure that out for your situation.
And Dave, she's talking about Part A specifically. Let's talk about Medicare, and let's talk about the different parts, because I'm assuming people on here are looking at this saying, I don't even know what parts are covered right now and what each of these parts are.
Yeah, there are four parts of Medicare. There's traditional Medicare, which is Part A and Part B. Part A is your hospitalization insurance, excluding the deductible. As long as you're not in there for a long period of time, it's going to cover a lot of benefits for you. Part B is your traditional health insurance. So if you've got to go to the clinic, you've got to get some blood tests done, that's Part B. It's got a deductible and a 20% copay, where whatever those charges are, you're going to pay out of pocket 20%. Part C is run by private companies, Medicare Advantage plans. These are those geographically driven plans that will then include Parts A and B and other benefits. So they'll cover some of the gaps. Maybe they'll offer dental, vision, hearing, those type of things that is not included in traditional Medicare. And then Part D is also run by third parties, but that's your prescription drug coverage. So that's really where you're going to get most of your drug coverage. Now, Part A, if you're in the hospital, obviously you're going to pay for some drugs. Part B may end up covering some drugs depending on your physical conditions, the medical conditions you have. But most of you are going to need to have a Part D policy, which can be bought by a third party or included in your Medicare Advantage plan to cover those prescription drug costs if you use prescriptions at all.
And Dave, I appreciate you covering that, because a lot of times as we're in here talking, we're getting pretty heavy in particular topics. Like on this one, we're talking about Medicare. And I wanted to kind of address this because I feel like you said at the beginning, a lot of people don't quite understand Medicare and they think it's a very simple piece. But when we get into it and dive through all the different pieces, there really is a lot of complexity to this.
There really is. And I wish the government would do a better job letting people know that. I mean, obviously, there's third parties out there that run ads all the time when the enrollment period's open, but it's pretty easy to tune those out because oftentimes, hey, are they telling us the truth, or are they just trying to sell us something? But it is a much more complex situation than we'd think it would be.
And Dave, I know we've talked about Medicare, so let's jump over to Social Security for a minute, because I do want to jump through, because we do have 4 topics that were covered from Medicare, Social Security, long-term care, and elder abuse. So I want to get a few of these in here, but let me get my next one here from Jean. And Jean is wondering, do you think Social Security will eventually become need-based?
I hope not. I think the way the programs work so well for such a long period of time is because it is truly an insurance program. It's designed to where you pay money in, you get a percentage back. Everyone's going to get the same percentages based upon what your income was pre-retirement. I hope not. I think once we turned into a welfare program, all we've got to do is look at many of the other welfare programs, not that efficiently run all the time, a lot of abuse inside of there, but it could happen. That's one of the potential options out there to fix the program, is to start taking it away from people. My thoughts is that they'll maybe start taxing those in higher income brackets more heavily for these benefits versus taking them away. So, in theory, they're getting the money back through the taxes. They're just not taking those benefits directly away from people.
And Dave, I do want to bring up, Nobi has a question for you. She's joining us from YouTube. She said, for a married couple, do you recommend each individual convert traditional IRA into Roth IRA? So we're talking if I have $600,000, my husband only has $200,000 in his. My strategy was to reduce mine so we'd have about $500,000, and she would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Nobi, and thanks for being with us today. In theory, yes, we do want to, we can transfer out of both. Now, assuming you stay married until you pass away, assuming you file jointly until you pass away, in reality, you can use that $500,000 number that we've talked about in some of our webinars. Not going to be a problem. I think what we've got to look at is what's going to happen if one of you were to pass away. What happens if we've not equaled these things out, and now one of us passes away and ends up having way too much money in there? Does it become much more costly in the future to do those conversions than now? And unfortunately, that's going to require some planning. There's no way in this time we have here we could walk through all of those steps. But you may want to look from a long-term side if there's a big age difference in the two of you, or a big health difference that says, hey, one of us may live a lot longer than the other. Take that in consideration as you're doing these conversions.
And Nobi, thank you so much for your question. If you have a follow-up for Dave, we're still here for about 10 more minutes, Dave. So I've got you 10 more minutes. I know you're out having some fun today, so I wanted to pull you in just for a little bit of work.
Oh, no problem. Happy to be here.
All right. Well, let me jump down because I've got a longer one here. So this is in two parts. So bear with me as I get through here. But I'm going to slaughter this name, but Surya Kant. I'm never even going to get it right. But I have paid into Social Security for 30 years from my self-employment consulting. I have not started taking RMDs for my college optional retirement plan, the ORP, because of the still working RMD exception. I'm 73 years old. In 2021, am I subject to windfall elimination on Social Security benefits I am receiving now, or is it a deferred until I actually start taking RMDs from my educational related ORP plan? Whew.
Yeah, a lot of information there as we look at this, and I'm not sure how that education ORP plan works. I mean, again, if he's got the freedom to defer that, really the windfall elimination provision isn't going to kick in until those benefits start being received. So if it is going to subject you to the windfall elimination provision, no, you're not going to have any issues on that Social Security until you start taking the benefits out of the program. But yes, once you do, if it subjects you to the windfall elimination provision, you would have the reduction unless, again, depending on how your work was and what was paid in Social Security, there would be a potential option that you have enough years of non-Social Security paid income, where you've got a part-time job or other things, or they paid in for enough years where you would be able to eliminate that windfall elimination provision. Because the real purpose of that is to try to help people, if you've got a government pension and you've paid very little in Social Security, what they don't want to do is give you the maximum Social Security benefits when you've got other income, because they do have lower bend points for those who have Social Security as their only source of income, hopes of providing them a better lifestyle in retirement.
And definitely, Suryakant, thank you so much for that question. I know that was a big one there for you, Dave. I do want to try to squeeze in one down here for long-term care if we can. I really love this question, and I put this on here. We did talk about this a bit, but what are your options for reducing the cost of long-term care? What did people do before it was common to spend $300,000 on long-term care?
Yeah, Christopher, they did the exact same thing that we're doing now, and that is letting Medicaid end up paying for it because people just keep getting themselves into a position. Now, the longer we live, the higher chance we're going to have a long-term care event. So go back to 1970, life expectancy was 10 years less than it is now. Well, that meant that we didn't have as much long-term care and many long-term care events. People were dying before they got to that point where they're going to be stuck in a facility for 3, 4, or 5 years, whatever the case may be. So that, but they were doing the same thing they are today. Now, as the long-term care insurance came out, started changing the landscape, saying, look, we now have an insurance policy that can help you cover this. Well, insurance companies had an issue. Now, all of the claims have been paid, but about 100 insurance companies have stopped offering these policies. They've said, look, this is just way too expensive for us. We're not going to offer them anymore. So now there's only about 15 companies that offer them. But then they also brought about these life insurance retirement plans, what we refer to them as. These are those permanent life insurance policies with a chronic illness rider. That's what Medicaid. They were spending down all their assets and they were letting Medicaid step in. And then they were going into that Medicaid facility that's nowhere near as nice as what they were hoping for.
And Dave, we didn't get to share Christopher's other conversation we had, but Christopher talked about how, family had all this money saved and it completely wiped them out because they had to pay for this. And so this is kind of up on that follow-up of what do we do? Because people don't realize we need this long-term care. And Dave, how many people really take advantage of long-term care? I guess not take advantage, but actually have to use it in later on in life.
Yeah. The numbers are staggering when we look at it. 35% chance of those going into retirement are going to have a long-term care event. And the reason that 50% of those, almost 50% aren't going to use it, they're going to die too soon. They're going to die before they hit life expectancy, which isn't a great option either. Saying, look, I died young. I didn't live out as long as I'd like to. Others are going to be like my wife's grandmother, who's in her mid-90s, healthy as could be. Not sure she's ever spent a day in the hospital. She's been very, very healthy. But when we look at it, it's just creating all kinds of headaches and all kinds of issues for retirees, and they've got to start planning for it. They've got to start putting things in place to help them deal with it.
Dave, you're talking 35%. So what about me? So I have car insurance, but what's the chance I'm ever going to use that car insurance if I get into an accident versus a long-term care?
Yeah, about 18% chance you're going to end up totaling your car and having to use that insurance. If you've got fire insurance on your house, only about 3% this is one of the biggest risks that exists in your life. And yet we don't understand that it's that big. And oftentimes we don't plan for it. And so it ends up happening like Christopher's family. You just end up liquidating assets, and the poor spouse that's left ends up having retirement that may only have Social Security there to be able to provide the income for them.
And Dave, we don't have a ton of questions on the elder abuse because that was kind of the final topic. And so by the time we got done, I didn't get to pull a lot of those questions, but I wanted to kind of get your perspective because that's the 4-part here about elder abuse and why it's important that we look at this right now in where we are in life.
Yeah, elder abuse is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. I was watching a documentary the other day that was just talking about scams, some of them being done out of India, some of them being done out of Jamaica, both big areas where these are happening. And they were explaining how these work. People are trying to prey on the elderly. They realize they have a lot of assets, more assets than they've ever had. And the biggest one, they realize they're lonely. I can't tell you, over and over through that documentary, they kept coming back and saying, people are lonely. They just want somebody to talk to. And before you know it, they're willing to start sending us money just because we're calling them and talking to them on a regular basis. And then $10 becomes 100, becomes 1,000, becomes 100,000, becomes a broke retiree. And obviously those calling aren't there out of the best interest of trying to provide you companionship. Now, that being said, I will tell you, even on the documentary, one of the guys got to a point, he said, look, I finally went and basically turned myself in without turning myself in. I went and told the authorities, this guy is getting scammed and he's losing too much money. You need to see what's happening. And they stepped in and stopped it before the guy lost his money. But he's like, look, my employers were saying, I just got to keep going, take everything he has. Well, when you got that attitude and you got maybe a mental state that's not quite what it used to be, maybe a place where the spouse who has passed away was the one who handled all the finances, it just creates a big environment for this abuse to happen. And we're seeing it over and over and over again.
Well, Dave, with that, there we're almost out of time, so I do want to pull up. And again, this is the webinar we're talking about. It's the foundation for a secure retirement. We have a lot of other options coming for this in the new year. But Dave, one of the ones I wanted to talk about before we jump over is I want you to talk about this upcoming webinar that we have. It's a brand new one that you just put together. If you can give me a little bit of detail on this.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this webinar. Now, we've had a webinar called, what will President Biden presidency mean to your retirement? We're taking part of that presentation and then adding a bunch of new information into here to really talk about what's going on in the retirement space. You see, there's really 3 items there on the bottom. The challenges. We're going to go back to the 70s and talk about where the problems we have now, how they started 50 years ago. We're going to talk about the changes, what's going on, what's happening now, what are the things that are being proposed, and then we're going to talk about your choices, give you some opportunities to try to solve the issues. So I'm very excited. I think it's going to be one of our top premier webinars from an attendance standpoint, because it really takes a deep dive into the history, into where we are now, what the future looks like, and then what we can do to start preparing ourselves for a future that's going to look a lot different than it did for our parents and grandparents.
And Dave, just so everyone knows, the Evolving Retirement Law webinar is coming out December 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be our first class. And then the second one will be on January 10th.
Yep, absolutely. And I tell people, get signed up for that now. I know we're going to do a little bit of marketing on that show or for that class. It's going to fill up. I will tell you now, they will allow you into that class if it does fill up for some few dollars, $20, something like that. But this class is going to fill up. It's going to be a top class, and we will teach it again in January, but definitely some great information.
And Dave, we're only just a few days away from Christmas. So I do want to get your retirement Christmas advice or anything you can share with us about Christmas, something that's been on your mind, because I know that you've been working tremendously hard over the last year.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I can tell everyone is give yourself the gift of time. Take time for yourself to plan these things out. Take time to meet with an advisor who can help you if you need that, which most of you, I'll tell you, do, because you're not going to have access. It's what you don't know that's the problem. It's not what you know. We can all sit out there and say, okay, yeah, I can pick my own ETFs. I can pick my own mutual funds. I can use, Vanguard or whatever to do these things. But can you go buy your own insurance if you need to add that in? Can you go buy your own annuities? Can I allocate this? Can I test all the risk? Can I look at what's going on with inflation, how that's going to impact me? What happens if I have a long-term care event? All of these things are what the advisors do. Please take the time, give yourself the gift of planning. That's what I would tell you. Give yourself the gift of planning this holiday season and allow people to get you on track. So you're not one of those 40% of Americans that's only going to live off Social Security. High number, unfortunately, people that are going to live off way less income during retirement and have a worse lifestyle than they had during all their working years.
And exactly what you're talking about, Dave. You can find all of this at retirementriskadvisors.com. You can start with one of our top main webinars, Getting Safely Through Retirement. And we've got lots of other courses out there to help you get through this. And I definitely agree, Dave, is we've got to take time. And I think that's the thing this year is we really reflect on that as we prepare for the new 2022 and make sure we're using all these ideas and education you give us to start the new year right.
And one other thing I would tell people is we're running our webinars throughout the holidays. So take advantage of it. This was something I was not going to do. I will tell you. In fact, when we look at it from this question and answer segment, that was all I was going to do for these last 2 weeks. And I said, why? People have a lot of time. They're able to sit down and go through these. I'll give some of my time back so people can take advantage of their downtime and get educated on these topics. So most of our webinars are going to be available through the holiday season. I think we've got probably another 8 or 10 that'll be taught before the end of the year. Take advantage of them, get signed up. You don't have to be a CPA, even though many of our webinars are done through CPA platforms. You can just come in, get your education, learn about things you need to, and then take action from that, what you end up learning.
Definitely agree. Well, Dave, we'll see you again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. We'll be here live. So if you didn't get your question to us, go ahead and get that submitted, and we'll make sure we get that responded to next time.
Okay, and I'm going to break some news to people here. I'm not, there was a possibility of wearing a, Christmas Santa suit this week. I'm not wearing the diaper next week for the new year, new baby coming in. So please know that isn't happening. I break that with you now. You don't have to worry about thinking about it throughout Christmas. That's not happening.
I was so hoping for the diaper suit, Dave. I'm so glad we won't have to see that.
Yeah, you're gonna have to have some other baby bring in the new year.
Yeah, maybe I'll get one on my dog. We'll see. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Bye.